For the record, my name is Brian Worrell, District 4 City Councilor, and I'm Chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Ways and Means. Today is May 27, 2025. It is 2:13 p.m. This hearing is being recorded. It is also being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and FiOS Channel 964. The Council's budget review process has encompassed a series of public hearings beginning in April and which will run through June. We strongly encourage residents to take a moment to engage in this process by giving testimony for the record. You can do this in several ways. You can give testimony in person, here in the chamber, or virtually via Zoom. For in-person testimony, please come to the chamber and sign up on the sheet near the entrance. It will be taken at the beginning of this hearing following the panelist presentation. Individuals will be called on in the order which they signed up and will have 2 minutes to testify. For virtual testimony, you can sign up using our online form on our Council Budget Review website or by emailing the committee at ccc.wm@boston.gov or by emailing karishma.chauhan@boston.gov. That is karishma.chouhan@boston.gov. You will receive the Zoom link and your name will be added to the list. When you are called to testify, please state your name and affiliation and/or residence and limit your comments to a few minutes to ensure that all comments and concerns can be heard. You can also email your written testimony to the committee at ccc.wm@boston.gov and also submit a 2-minute video of your testimony through the form on our website. For more information on the City Council budget process and how to testify and to view the full hearing schedule, please visit the City Council's budget website at boston.gov/council-budget. Today's hearing is on dockets number 0822 through 0830. The FY26 budget for the Treasury Department, Collecting Division, and the Office of Participatory Budgeted. These matters were sponsored by Mayor Michelle Wu and referred to the committee on April 9, 2025. Today I'm joined by my council colleagues in order of arrival, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Murphy, and also Councilor Braden. I would now like to turn it over to today's panelists for them to introduce themselves and to dive into their presentation. The floor is now yours.
Great. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, councilors. Thanks so much for having us. I'm Ashley Grafenberger, Chief Financial Officer and Chief of the Finance Cabinet. I'm joined here today by many of my Finance Cabinet colleagues, and we're happy to be here to give an overview of the Office of Participatory Budgeting and Treasury and Collecting. So I will turn it over. I will also preface by saying our treasurer, Jerica Bradley, had to be out of town. I think she's trying to join remotely, but may not be able to. So in her stead, we have our interim deputy treasurer, Tim McKenzie, here to talk through that. So I will turn it over to Renato Costello for Office of Participatory Budgeting.
Mr. Chair and members of the council, my name is Renato Costello. I am the director of the Office of Participatory Budgeting.
Celia Barton, First Assistant Collector Treasurer of the Treasury Department.
Tim McKenzie, Interim Deputy Treasurer.
Okay. Now, if you want to dive into the presentation, I think you're first.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay. So I'll give an overview of the Office of Participatory Budgeting and also share some updates of the pilot year, which ended in February of this year. Participatory budgeting is a democratic process where community members decide how to spend a portion of the public budget. PB, also known as, advances the city's goals around civic engagement and community collaboration by addressing barriers for public participation and decision-making in local government, elevating resident-informed project ideas that reflect their priorities and lived experiences, and bringing communities and city government together to foster a collective vision for the city. The mission of the Office of Participatory Budgeting is to provide an official point of entry for Boston residents to contribute to the city's budget process. Through partnerships with community organizations, collaboration with city departments, and guidance from our external oversight board, the office hosts yearly participatory budgeting cycles for continuous public engagement. By doing this, we offer opportunities for the public to propose community-centered project ideas to address local priorities, engage resident priorities to inform the city's budget process. This is our organizational chart. Me as the director, Cynthia Lin as Chief of Staff, and my colleague Blanca Teixeira, Finance and Controls Manager here in the audience. So FY26 recommended budget overview. Our operating budget recommended is $2,134,250. That's a total increase of $1,927 over FY25, which is driven by general wage increases. 64% of operating budget supports PV projects through the special appropriations line. The special revenue fund, as authorized by the PV ordinance, prior year balances in OPV's operating budget have been rolled into a separate continuous fund. And using these accumulated balances of the fund, we can award $2 million worth of projects in the FY26 cycle. And here is an overview of how the special revenue fund works. Basically, in FY23, we did not have a starting balance because that's when the office was established. And we had unspent funds to carry forward, which was the appropriation that we received in FY23. So that's $1,999,000 approximately. So that year, because there was no office and nothing to spend on, all that balance moved into the special appropriations line. So in FY24, that was our starting balance, the $1.999 million. In FY24, we had about $1.3 million left from our appropriation for that year. So those two balances combined to have in total $3.3 million in the special revenue fund at the end of FY24. And FY24 was the year where we were planning the launch of the PV cycle. So for that particular year, we did not have an allocation for projects because by then we had not completed the PV cycle. In FY25, we started the special revenue fund with those $3.3 million. And we didn't spend from our FY25 allocation about $1.4 million. On FY25, we did allocate $2 million for projects, which is the result of our pilot year. So the special revenue fund ending balance is approximately $2.7 million at the end of this FY25. And we moved that, to the next fiscal year. So we start with a 2.7. We estimate that we'll have about $1.3 million left from our appropriation from FY26, minus the $2 million for cycle 2 projects. We will have a $2.1 million left in the special revenue fund. And we decided to move forward in this way instead of using all the available funds for PV projects to ensure that we have sustainability of the PV process over time. And that was mainly because if we are spending, let's say, the 3.3 we had at the end of FY24, we wouldn't be able to guarantee that for the next PV cycle we'll have the same amount of money. And that becomes an issue when residents see one amount of money for projects, and because we wouldn't be able to guarantee the same amount for the future cycle. If it's less, people will be disappointed or disengaged about the process. So we decided to keep the minimum consistent of $2 million for the next few cycles. And there is always the possibility of increasing that amount, but we want to keep at least that minimum balance for continuity and sustainability of the process. So I'll report on the outcomes and the highlights of our pilot year, which I'm happy to report that it was a successful pilot year. We started in July of 2024 with what we call idea collection, and we asked residents across the city to tell us the types of ideas they want to see become a reality in their communities. And we collected about 1,200 ideas during that first cycle through multiple channels for about a month and a half. Then the office, with assistance from the data analytics team, we reviewed and analyzed all those ideas, and we put them into different categories. So we classified them, and we brought those ideas back to residents in the form of visioning forums. And this happened in October of last year. We held 3 visioning forums in East Boston, Roxbury, and Dorchester, with about 100 residents participating in total. And the goals of these forums was for residents to review the ideas and talk about feasibility, engage with city departments, and come up with 15 proposals that will go into the ballot for other residents to vote across the city. And finally, we had voting between January 15th and February 15th of this year, and we ended up having 14 ballot proposals for residents to choose their favorite projects. And we collected 4,460 votes online and in person, which it is a good baseline for us as a pilot year. And the highest voter turnout was in Dorchester, Brighton, Roxbury, East Boston, South Boston, and Hyde Park. And here I want to talk about one of the models we tested during this pilot year, which is working with community organizations to ensure that we can connect with residents who are usually not as involved in these types of processes. So during cycle 1 of Ideas in Action, the office contracted with 9 nonprofit organizations to purposefully reach residents who experience higher barriers to engage in local decision making. And our goal in partnering with these community organizations is to leverage their expertise and trust in the community so more people can participate in our process. And these were the results of the first year voting. We had six projects in total that were awarded a combined amount of $2 million. And these all were ideas that came from residents and were chosen by residents and selected by them. So number 1 was expand access to fresh foods in Boston, which received $400,000 in funding. Number 2, rat prevention initiatives in dense residential areas received $500,000. Programs to support incarcerated and formerly incarcerated youth, $250,000. Rental assistance for Boston youth ages 16 to 24, $200,000. Support community gardens in neighborhoods with limited access to affordable food, $500,000, and install benches at high ridership public transit bus stops in Boston received $150,000. We also created a dashboard that shows all the ideas that residents submitted during the first pilot year. And here you can see them by geographic distribution, where the ideas came from, classified in different categories. And also you can see this word cloud with some of the keywords, the key priorities that people talked about in those ideas. And it's very interactive, and this is open to the public, open to the council, to everyone to see what were the priorities of residents during this first cycle, the ideas that were submitted in the summer of 2024. We contracted an external evaluation team to help us assess the impact of this first pilot year. And among the many indicators, the ones that relate to community engagement, which focus on trust in city government. So across all phases, participants felt that Ideas in Action allowed their voices to be heard by the city of Boston, which is an early indicator of trust in city government. People had interest in future civic engagement. So across all phases, participants were interested in engaging in Ideas in Action again. And notably, almost all voters who responded to the survey planned to vote again. And all 6 projects explicitly center the needs of populations that often face barriers to participation, especially youth, residents with limited or inconsistent access to nutritious food, and those living in areas of high residential density or transit needs. And here I'm including a quote from one of the participants who engaged in these debrief conversations with the evaluation team, and I'll quote. So, "I applaud the city for doing this, because you all went to the community. You can't do anything for us without our input. So I love that the city came to us. There is only so many things that we could put the money into and do those tons of ideas. This is the first steps of many. So we'll be back with more input, and we'll bring more, and we'll make sure that you all listen." These visioning forums, we work with about 20 city departments to bring staff to the community to engage with residents as they were discussing the types of ideas they wanted to see on the TV ballot. And for cycle 2, we're preparing to launch this July the second iteration of this process. And one of the key changes we want to reinforce and expand is the partnership with community groups. So far, we have about 18 community organizations that applied to an application that we opened to recruit groups to help us be an extension of the office out there in the community. And these organizations will help us collecting ideas, supporting visioning forums, and also supporting voter engagement in the months of January and February. And we're opening many channels for residents to participate, including events hosted by community partners, what we call PV corners at City Hall and public library branches, and we're also exploring a partnership with VCYF recreational centers so people can engage with PV during the summer months. We'll have a website available as last year, and for accessibility reasons, we'll have a phone line that people can call and leave their ideas with us. So here is a timeline of our process. So July is the kickoff, and we'll collect ideas. We'll then review those ideas between August and September and bring those back to residents for developing proposals between October and December. We'll do voting between January and February, and in the spring of 26, we'll start with the funding of the projects. Thank you.
Hi, Celia Barton, First Assistant Collector Treasurer, Collecting Division. I first have our org chart. The department is divided into four sections. The mission statement for the department is to collect property tax, all revenues owed to the city, providing professional, courteous, and responsive service to taxpayers. We maintain the highest collection rate possible and actively pursue all collection remedies around and under the statute. FY24, our collection rate was 99.2, the same as it was in FY23. FY22 was 99.1. So we've increased collections as we go forward. The first area is general management, and that's responsible for all the hiring, the training, and continue any enhancements that we can put for collection efforts. We installed pay by phone online portal to ensure efficient experience for especially elders that don't use their phone so much that they can call in and get their payment through. Special collections. That's the part of the division that we collect current real estate tax, but mostly delinquent. We collaborate with different departments throughout the city, Mayor's Office of Housing, Home Center, Age Strong. So if anybody has issues that they can't pay the bill, we try to reach out to them and help them in any way we can. Especially the elders, if we see somebody that's struggling, we'll go down and work with Age Strong so they can help them get on a payment plan or whatever they need to process. And then we do tax takings as necessary. Payment services is all our telewindows. I'm talking faster than my slides. The payment services is the telewindows, and that collects all our tax payments, permits, and they reconcile daily for deposit with the Treasury Department. There we go. Accounting and quality control. This is where we maintain the financial records from the collecting division and monitor the division's activities. Identify, investigate, and process overpayments and misapplied payments, and reconcile all collections in coordination with the city auditor to ensure financial accuracy and compliance. Data processing is where all the revenue comes through the office. We have a lockbox, we have online, we have people at the window, and we have phone payments. That maintains all the electronic data. We tried to enhance the online payment with a copy of somebody's tax bill, so they can print it out and have it for their records. We implemented the online system for you can prepay your taxes, or you can schedule your payments, so you don't, if you forget, they come out automatically. For future, we implemented a software to reach out to taxpayers by emails or cell phones. And so far, we've collected $23.1 million in delinquent taxes, which decreased our tax title from FY23 to 24 by 23%, because it's all about notice. If people don't get the notice, they don't realize they have to pay. And so if we're reaching out by different emails and cell phones, it's been very successful. For our future plans, we're trying to put the QR code on the tax bill, so that'll allow somebody to just click in to the online to make their payments. Anything we can do to make the experience easier, because paying taxes is not, it's not something people want to do. So,
All right, my name is Tim McKenzie. I'm the interim deputy treasurer. Thank you for having me. In Treasury, basically we are the stewards of the city of Boston's cash and investments. We oversee the collection and the disbursement of the city funds. We manage the city's financial operations and debt obligations. We have cash flow forecasting. We manage defined contribution plans and 403Bs. We maintain banking, investing, and financial relationships. We also oversee the trust and the community preservation office. We're basically divided up into 5 groups: administration, part of the group, and the office management, as well as community preservation and trust. As I touched upon, those both fall under treasuries with their own leaders. And then we have finance, which is divided into 2 teams, which do the accounting, the tax management, and also manage with the bond deals and the lease purchase payments. We have the defined contribution management, cash flow forecasting, investment management, and compliance in another group. And under the operations group, this is the one that's customer facing on the phone and in the window. They make and arrange all the big vendor payments. They manage the city payrolls, retirement payrolls, and accounts payable. And then lastly, we have the revenue management team, which has a loan module and the accounts receivables. The Treasury's FY26 recommended budget was approximately $2.63 million. This was an increase of $137,000 over FY25, and this was primarily driven by 2 factors: wage increases with salary benchmarking and increase in postage cost. And about 80% of our operating budget is personnel. The operating budget that you see here does not include the costs through the trust and the community preservation office. And what we do in Treasury, we process $110 million per month of payroll, $65 million a month for retirees. We process and print 55,000 checks and advices per month for employees, vendors, and retirees. We pay $200 million a month in vendors, $32 million a month in state and federal taxes. We process 21,000 W-2s annually. We submit 1099s for the vendors and retirees. We process, collect receivables and grants, and we also maintain fraud control and prevention.
Okay, I think that's what we have prepared for you all today, and we welcome your questions. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Just want to acknowledge that Council Coletta Zapata, Council President Louis Jen, and Council Weber has joined us. We will now have a round of public testimony. You can testify either in person or via Zoom. If you would like to testify virtually, please sign up in advance using the link below. After you have signed up, you will be provided with the hearing Zoom link. Please make sure you are signed into Zoom with the full name you signed up with to help us call on you appropriately. If you would like to testify in person, please sign up on the sheet near the chamber entrance, and when your name is called to testify, please step forward and introduce yourself into the microphone. Participants will be called on in the order which they signed up and will have 2 minutes to testify. We will start online. And Alex Shames. All right, we will wait for online and then take in-person testimony, starting with Kathy Henriquez and then Francesco Tena.
Hi, everyone. Hi, my name is Kathy Enriquez. I'm an Eastie resident, and I'm a member of the Better Budget Alliance. I've had personal experiences with participatory budgeting in Boston. When the pilot process finally started last summer, the organizations that partner with the Office of PB to host idea collection sessions, as Renato mentioned, had the rooms filled sometimes to the max capacity in their rooms. And so despite this year being a small pilot process, it really showed that people are engaged, that people care, and that people are excited. However, we did experience a lot of frustration due to the small amount of funds in this year's PB fund. I remember being in East Boston during the narrowing of ideas, and one resident said as we were in the table, "Oh, it's $2 million for an East Boston project," which I then clarified that we had just $2 million for citywide projects. Disappointment is the only word that I can think of right now to describe that energy that I felt afterwards. She wasn't the only one that we heard that from. We constantly heard $2 million is not enough, or what can we really do with $2 million for the whole city? And so when we talk about needing communities to be more active in civic life, even the Office of PB's goal is to increase civic engagement in Boston. It's hard to do that. It's hard to ask people to show up when it's only $2 million at the table for the whole city. So hard to do that when it's $2 million out of a $4.8 billion budget. I encourage you all councilors to take a look at the ideas that were submitted last summer. I also encourage all of you councilors to participate in the process with your constituents, because this process really showed us, yet again, that we as residents know our needs. We clearly have thousands of ideas to improve our city and to meet our own needs. So allow us to do that. 1% should be the minimum amount that the people of Boston should have direct control over. So I ask that you take the first step towards that goal this budget season and vote together to allocate more funding towards the PV fund. Thank you. I don't know if I have more time, but I also have copies of my testimony if any of you councilors want it.
Yes, we'll take the copy. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Francesco?
Good afternoon, councilors. My name is Francesco Tena. I grew up in JP, live in Hyde Park, and am the former manager of the youth participatory budgeting process here in Boston. So I've seen what's possible when we invite residents, not just to vote on budget office approved projects, but to deliberate, to debate, to shape public decisions from the start. That's the promise of participatory budgeting, but right now, what we have here in Boston doesn't live up to that. Councilor Flynn raised a clear example earlier today, EV charging stations in South Boston installed with no public engagement. And that's not just a one-off issue, that's a symptom of a broader pattern where the public is treated as an obstacle to be pacified rather than a partner. Real participatory budgeting is a solution to that. It's not just a vote at the end of the process, but a structure, an infrastructure for democratic input at every stage. The office talks about a low allocation being more sustainable, but this is the budget office talking about how much money it plans to invest into this democratic infrastructure. They're borrowing from past allocations because they don't plan any future allocations. In fact, dollars spent through participatory budgeting are more fiscally responsible. They're what the public is vetting. They're prioritizing. They're understanding this. What we have now isn't delivering that. The process is fractured. We're seeing one-touch engagements without continuity. One thing that the idea portal does not let you do is talk to the residents that submitted those ideas to get an understanding of why they are priorities to them. The ideas are then interpreted by another resident and then voted on by strangers. It's democratic in name, but not actually in practice. After the first cycle, which we were told is a pilot for learning, everything has remained the same. There's been no meaningful redesign. Apparently, they got it right the first time. This is what we call the process stagnation, where the process is not changing and the allocation is not going up. It usually happens after a few cycles in cities where there is staff turnover, but this is very early for it to happen in a city doing PB for the first time. I believe we can do better. I believe this council can lead the charge. I'm starting to explore what it might look like for Boston to host citizen assemblies, another democratic process related to participatory budgeting, on the city budget. A group of everyday residents selected by lottery, resourced and supported to understand the full budget, deliberate on it, and offer recommendations. It's a vision I'm excited to shape with your partnership, because if Boston is ready to move beyond symbolic engagement and towards a real democratic power building, this council can be the body to make that happen. You created the Office of Participatory Budgeting. You can shape what it becomes. So let's make something that actually earns its name. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll go to a video from Shari Davis.
Hello, my name is Sherry Davis, and I proudly serve as the co-executive director at the Center for Economic Democracy. I am a child of Boston. I graduated from the Boston Public Schools, and I worked in local government in Boston for nearly 15 years. I am a person that was raised by the city and raised to believe that the city of Boston has a legacy of people power, of investing in people, of investing in young people, and of sharing in power to make really good decisions together. The Mayor's Youth Council in Boston was a model across the country, and that's the same thing that I hope when it comes to participatory budgeting. Boston led the country in youth participatory budgeting and has an opportunity to make meaningful this citywide participatory budgeting effort. Across the globe, we see initiatives like participatory budgeting address real issues in community, close racial wealth gaps, and improve things like infant mortality rates. Look at Porto Alegre, Brazil, where participatory budgeting started. PB has the potential to change social determinants of health for residents that participate in the process. That doesn't happen when we have small PB. We have to have participatory budgeting that's large enough to meet the impact that we want to have in the world. $2 million isn't going to do that. But as we grow the pot of funds for participatory budgeting, it makes it easier to administer city services. I say that as a former city staff person, and it allows us to streamline engagement. We can make better decisions together, and it starts with growing participatory budgeting and investing in a process that serves community. We've seen this happen around the globe, and I urge you to make this happen in the city of Boston. Thank you.
Thank you. Just like to thank all the residents who came out to lend their voice to the process. Also want to acknowledge that we have been joined by Councilor Mejia and also the Vice Chair of the committee, Councilor Pepin. Now we'll go to my council colleagues for first round of questions, starting with Councilor Flynn. Councilor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to say thank you to the administration team that is here for the important work you are doing. And Celia, especially want to acknowledge the professionalism of your team and the work your team does every day.
Thank you, Council.
We pay our taxes. Actually, I love going to pay it quarterly in person. My wife and I usually do it, but I love talking to the people that are at the booth there, and just the professionalism that they provide the residents and assistance they provide is exceptional. So I wanted to acknowledge that from your team.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. So I want to be respectful to everybody, especially to the young people that are here and that are listening. But I do think after the pandemic, the economic situation in Boston has changed dramatically, in my opinion. Unpredictable cuts in federal funding are certainly coming. In my opinion, it's critical that we show the taxpayers of Boston that we take our financial responsibilities seriously. Civic engagement, I agree, for our youth is critically important. However, I do think during these difficult, economic, challenging times that going forward with participatory budget is not the right move. And I respect people's opinion that disagree with me, but I would recommend a $1 million decrease in the budget until we're able to get on better economic footing here in the city of Boston. Again, want to be respectful to everybody, but that's just my opinion. It's about demonstrating fiscal discipline and demonstrating fiscal responsibility especially during difficult economic times. Mr. Chair, I'm not going to ask any questions. I have a 3 o'clock meeting. I do apologize that I am leaving, but I am going to Chinatown to meet with some residents about immigration-related issues. So I will be leaving, and just wanted to let you know, but I want to respect the chair, but I do have to leave early. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. The chair recognizes Councilor Murphy. Councilor, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you to the team. Some of my questions, you had a great opening, so you kind of touched on them, but I'll highlight again. And thank you to the residents who are here. Always good to see people here in the chamber. You spoke to the total budget for implementation and outreach will be the first questions. So you told us what the total FY25 budget was for the Office of Participatory Budgeting and what's proposed, but how are we ensuring that equitable outreach and participation across all neighborhoods, particularly those which you spoke to in underrepresented neighborhoods? I think you highlighted a few that had great turnout, and if you could then speak to why you thought those neighborhoods had better turnout maybe than others, and how we could do better next time.
Thank you, Councillor, for that question. The main strategy of our office was to partner with groups on the ground that work with those communities and provide funding and the resources they need to help bring people to the table and share their ideas and participate in the discussions and forums and also voting. We're very happy that after the first pilot year, we had almost 20 organizations across the city applying to become partners with us to continue to expand the initiative. So that's one of the main strategies to ensure that people have a voice and we can connect with those residents who, on their own, it may be very difficult for them to find a way to engage in the process.
And you said there's 20 nonprofits that you're part around?
About 20, yeah.
And how much of your total office budget went to supporting the nonprofits to help bring in the residents?
For cycle 1, we had about $50,000. I can get you the exact numbers. For cycle 1, for the 9 groups, we contracted with them during the summer for idea collection, but also in the fall to support with these forums to make the decisions about the proposals.
And I'm going to make an assumption, but those had language access, right? And that's how you chose the groups also based on that need?
Yes, and we also leveraged the LCA team to help us with translating of materials. But we went beyond language. For the first year, we contracted with organizations working with returning citizens, older adults, the disabilities community. So we had a wide range of organizations engaging in the first year.
Okay, great. I think you said there were 6 projects selected or ideas. How many were submitted?
So we had about 1,200 ideas that residents submitted, and during the forums in the fall, residents themselves prioritized 15 projects to be on the ballot. And in those forums, we had city staff at the tables with residents talking about feasibility. And then those ideas were brought to the city and refined by the specific departments that are in charge of implementing those ideas. Yeah.
So similar to our amendment process, we often find out that ends up kind of being just a suggestion. Like, how will we ensure that these actual amendments brought forward through this, that they'll be executed?
Executed. We are working currently with departments for all the 6 ideas, and we are drafting implementation plans, and the plan is to have those projects begin this year. So we're really intentional about making sure that whatever people voted on gets implemented as soon as possible.
Okay. And you spoke to it, but I did have a question about strategies to make sure that our seniors, persons with disabilities, youth got engaged in the process, but thank you. The first round, I remember going on a bunch of the forums, and it seemed like the overall request were dog parks. I was glad, which is good. I have 2 dogs, so happy to see more dog parks around the city, but you don't have to go into it, but I do appreciate the 6 that you mentioned were very diverse and needs across the city, so happy to support those. I think I have enough time to ask a few questions on the collection treasury side. Thank you. Without your departments, we would have no money. We would never be here. And our biggest role on the council, obviously, is the budget and being fiscally responsible. So thank you for getting people to pay their taxes so we can have these conversations. And you did speak to an increase. So my first question, you already answered that you're seeing an increase in collection. It's going up. Yes. One question, though, when you talked about the mail, the postage stamps are going up 5 cents soon. How much does that end up costing us, and will we have an actual 5 cent per mailer? Like, because we mail out a lot of times a year.
We mail out over 1 million tax bills.
1 million tax bills. So how much are we budgeting for that increase?
We did, yes.
Same in Treasury, we have budgeted for that increase as well.
Do we know the dollar? I mean, I could do the math quick, 1.5 million, but has that cut out of others, or are we just giving more money to the departments to make sure they cover that cost, or did it have to get pulled from some other services we provide in your departments?
We were level funded across all areas except postage, and we have small decreases in a couple of different areas, but also our postage mailings have increased due to code enforcement. But we've seen great amount of success with that as well on the revenue side.
Okay.
So we also send them out to pre-sort, so we save a couple of pennies on the bills that way. You do that way, right?
Yeah. And I feel like we were on the same page because my questions covered your, but you already spoke to the seniors and working alongside Age Strong if there's a need for any relief programs or payment plans, that you do that already. But what investments are being made to modernize, if at all, the tax collection system? And do you work, like, we do it more? Do we hope? I know there'll always be people who want it in the mail, but will we get to a place where you have to kind of opt in for the mail?
Yeah, it is a state requirement now to mail the bill.
Okay, so
But,
even if, what percentage do we think pay online? Do we have that number?
I can get that for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's still a lot, so even if people are using the online option, we still legally have to mail them?
We have to legally mail them,
Oh,
correct?
that's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
But we
thank
do
you.
put a copy on the website too, so
You
they
do.
can get a printout.
But we still would have to.
We would have to
At least
mail
now
them.
with the way the law is
Right.
stated. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all you do, and thank you for collecting the money for us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. The chair recognizes Counselor Braden. Counselor, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just curious about the participatory budgeting. I know we had a participatory budgeting for youth in BCYF. Is that still ongoing? Do you know?
It is
It is. And what's the fund for that participatory?
$1 million.
$1 million. And do they have a separate process for, is that organised by BCYF?
That's organized by the Office of Youth Advancement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
And what sort of projects do you know? It's a different basket, obviously. Do you know what sort of projects the youth put the money to?
I'll need to check. I know their funding comes from the capital budget, so they focus more on infrastructure. Ours is on the operating side, so we could do also programs and services.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And then I just the City of Boston City Record in November always publishes the outstanding real estate taxes. And I see in here there's some big projects that are newly built projects, and there's like over 10 units that are not, they're in a trust and they're not paying their real estate taxes. Is there many sort of instances of that sort of level of non-payment of real estate taxes for new buildings?
No, not really. We actually, the taking this year was 23% less than it was the year before.
Okay.
So we have more of an outreach program that we didn't have before.
Mm-hmm.
So we send out emails. We go to, like condos especially.
Mm-hmm.
We go to the condo association and we try to get as many outreach programs that we can for them to realize. A lot of times they're not aware of it. Like when it's a condo and then it switches to units, they're not aware that the bill is still have to be paid through the condo association, not the units, because the units haven't been issued yet. So we reach out now to, between the emails and the phones, we get a lot of cell phone numbers now that we can reach out, and we've actually, we probably got like over 300 payments from the time we advertised until we actually did the taking.
So, and I know a lot of folks, come here like seasonally, and maybe they go to Florida or somewhere for winter or whatever. So that's good. In terms of just, do we know how much is outstanding in terms of unpaid real estate taxes? That's a hard question just to throw out here all of a sudden.
For this year?
Yeah.
I can get that for you.
Yeah. And in terms of, the other question I had was with regard to condos. Is it just the units, or does the condo association, is it responsible for common areas and like outdoor spaces?
No,
and
it's just the units.
Yeah. So if there's if there's garden space outside, they don't have to pay
it's
for
all
that.
Incorporated. The condo main doesn't pay anything. It's all divided by all the units.
Okay. Right. And I asked you about the youth. The other question I had was really about, I'm delighted to hear about the QR codes. I made the mistake when I was paying my taxes recently. I scheduled it for May 26 instead of May 25, so I got charged for paying it. Well, it was the automation said it's paid, you're all set, so I went away and forgot about it. And then the next bill came in and says, "Oh, I have a past due payment," or something happened here. It's like, but things happen. But it's good to be able to do it online. In terms of the participatory budgeting and expanding community partnerships, this year you had 18 community partners. Is there a critical sort of optimal number of partnerships that make it work well?
So the first year we had 9, and we were successfully able to coordinate and manage with them. We're trying with a little more this year, and I think that will be part of the learning process on how we coordinate with different groups. We are planning info sessions for all the community partners and one-on-one meetings ahead of the activity, so everybody is on the same page and have the resources they need from our office. We'll test how it goes this year and then see what direction we take for cycle 3.
Mm-hmm. Good. And in terms of just thinking about the amount of money, it really is a pitifully small amount of money for the whole city. Is there, and they're spending money on things that we would be spending money on anyway. They just sort of I feel that they are. Is there any way we can get some more money for participatory budgeting? Because the intention was to have a lot more money in that fund. And it usually is spent on things that we'd be spending on anyway. So, yeah, that's probably one for you.
Thanks for the question. So like with anything in the budget, it's a choice that we all make each year when we're putting together. I think if Renato were answering this question, it's we could always do more with more, but with the amount we have, we feel like we've been able, at least in the first cycle, I think we're both really proud of the work that has happened, kind of creating this out of with our board and other folks in the community. So I think we're really proud with what we've done, and I think the way we've structured it is, despite some of the challenges that we might be seeing in the coming years with the broader economy and how that might impact our budget, because of the ordinance allows us that flexibility to carry funds over multiple years. We feel like that $2 million level is kind of that sweet spot that allows us to provide some amount of predictability and stability to that allocation for the next couple of years when other things might not be experiencing that level of stability. So I hope that answers your question, but I think we've kind of presented something that we feel is workable.
Yeah, I'm really pleased with how the pilot seems to have gone. It was good to have a good run through and iron out any kinks. But I still think having some more money in there would be great. But I don't suppose Renato disagrees with me. I've got 11 seconds left. Let's see what else I have here. In terms of the operating budget for participatory budgeting, the non-personnel numbers, is that the actual funds that go out on the projects?
Let me see.
Or is that just funding for your administration?
Are you looking at the slide?
I'm actually looking at the budget page.
A budget page.
Yeah. And I'm out of time.
Yeah.
I'll come back.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
We'll
Mr. Chair, if you want.
We'll pull it up.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The chair recognizes Councillor Coletta Zapata. Councillor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and I just want to shout out my Eastie residents who are here. Thank you so much for being here. Nube, I see you. Kathy, Penny, thank you, everyone. My first question is for Renato, and thank you so much for your leadership. I've known you since you were in Moya, correct? Okay, and I remember when you were named the inaugural director, and just kudos to you for the process that you've put together, and I appreciate it. This office, the participatory budgeting was put together during the city charter amendment, which allowed for the council to have the ability to amend operating line items, and this was a part of bringing in the community and building trust with the neighborhoods to have ownership and say over where their taxpayer dollars are going. And so this is a crucial initiative that you are heading, and I think that you've done your part and will continue to do that in building trust with the community and with the neighborhoods. That being said, I echo my colleague, Councilor Braden, where the initial intent and the spirit of this office and the funding for it was supposed to be over time tiered upwards, right? I had been told, and everybody else had been told, that we wanted to get through this pilot program first to figure out if this would be successful and to have you and others demonstrate success. And so over time, tiering up your budget line item is important to me and something that I support. I know it's already been said by the CFO, CFO Grafenberger, but CFO, if you wouldn't mind just talking through, or maybe your answer to what you think about the PB office being funded, or the PB fund being funded at $2 million, and then $3 million, $4 million, $5 million, going up over time, because that was the spirit and the intent of the original ordinance and in discussions with the council back in, I think, 2021.
Yep, so kind of a similar answer to what I just said to Councilor Braden. I mean, these are choices that we make each year as part of the budget process, where we're weighing decisions to increase funding in one area against needs all across the city. And so for this next year in particular, I think we felt that $2 million was what we viewed as being affordable and sustainable for this upcoming year. And future years and those decisions will just be made in the future, kind of in the context of those. But there's nothing, prescribing increases. I know there's a desire to do that, and we'd be certainly willing to have those conversations as part of future budget processes.
And just remind me, and I should know this is just for me and maybe the public that's listening in. So the rollover, the ability to do that, we had to, I'm seeing it here, it was a special revenue fund.
Yes.
That allows for that. Can you talk through whether or not that's common in the city? Is this the only instance where we have that sort of special revenue fund?
So there are a number of special revenue funds that exist. This is one of the newer ones that I'm aware of, and we created it as part of the ordinance. So different special revenue funds have different, enabling statutes associated with them that allow for funds to be put into, these special funds. So it's not super common as it relates to the operating budget typically. This is kind of a very, somewhat unique instance with the Office of Participatory Budgeting.
Thank you. How does the Oversight Board participate in shaping the PB process, and specifically the budget for your office?
Right. Thank you for that question. We meet with the board on a very regular basis at the beginning of the process, almost every week, to define the rule book, which is the guiding document of the process. So they had a say on basically how we structured at least the pilot year, and they just approved the rule book for the second year. So they serve as advisors, oversee our work, and during the I lost my train of thought on that, but basically we're now meeting on a monthly basis, and they also provide suggestions and comments on some of the proposals that we as an office put forth on how to continue with the process. The board officially doesn't have the ability to determine the amount of funding for the process, but they have certainly expressed opinions about that. So that's kind of like their role is more as advisors overseeing, supporting our office, but on the funding side, the ordinance doesn't establish that as a role that they have.
Thank you. And I do look forward to collaborating and being deeply involved as we move forward in this process. There are folks even within this very council that is skeptical, I guess, to put it diplomatically, about this process. But we all know the power of bringing people into the budget process and what that means for ownership, again, of folks' taxpayer dollars. So really supportive of this and supportive of you. My next question is to Treasury. This is essentially the hearing for assessing. Is that correct? No? Okay.
This is Treasury and the collecting division. Assessing is a separate department.
Okay, so assessing will have its own hearing? I'm sorry, Chair, I should know this. No?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
We work so Celia and the collecting team obviously work super closely with with assessing, because they are sort of a huge input into bills that Celia's team is responsible for printing and mailing, but they are not doing the actual assessing.
Okay. In terms of the, I just want to make sure I have my notes here. There was an increase, there we go, for 128 for wage increases, salary benchmarking, and increase in postage cost. Given everything that's been going on with receiving revenue, do we feel like this is adequate enough given some of the additional work that the city has asked to do on behalf of small businesses and residents and all of that? And I know that you helped put this together, but is there a move to try to get more folks working for the Treasury Department to assist with some of this work, or is the $128,000 just for the wage increases or salary benchmarking?
Yeah, there are no new positions sort of contemplated in the department, and that, was pretty standard across all of the city departments in this budget for, as we said, when we were rolling out the overall budget, really needing to constrain growth. And so we were also similarly subject to those limitations as well in the finance cabinet. But obviously we wanted to ensure that we were paying people what they are obligated to be paid. The Treasury Department just underwent a pretty extensive benchmarking exercise to ensure that the staff were appropriately graded and compensated for their updated duties. So that's reflected in here. And then I think, as Tim was mentioning earlier, the cost of postage factoring in that increase. So certainly, I think, we feel good about our ability to deliver and administer our core mission in this upcoming year and continue to maintain a very high collection rate. And we'll see in the future if there's opportunities to expand, but we feel comfortable with the budget.
Thank you, and I know that's my time, Chair. Just one small question.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. Has your workload increased at all, though?
Well, we have more tax bills, but nothing that the department can't handle.
Okay.
We're implementing new programs to help us with the collections, so that's, just doing that itself makes it a lot easier for us. So.
Thank you.
And on the Treasury side, we just incorporated the code enforcement violations that we mail out weekly. There's about 800 a week. So that was part of the increase in our postage, but again, the revenue has far outweighed the costs.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. The chair recognizes Council President Louis Jen. Councilor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the administration for being here, and Dr. Costello for all of your work. I want to thank members of the public who came out and offered testimony both in person and over Zoom. And thank you for the people-led movement that really got us here to participatory budgeting to bring people closer to the work of democracy. My colleagues really already asked a number of questions that I had, but Director Costello, this is going to be like a way of rewrapping a question that's already been asked, but it's because you sort of answered it differently than others. When you were talking about in the potential increases to the participatory budgeting line item, you said that there is an openness to it, and that it sounded as though that there was more flexibility to increasing the budget allocation for participatory budgeting than we would suggest from like the allocation that's here in the budget book. Is that correct, or did you just mean it in a different way?
I don't recall my exact words, but based on your question, the budget can increase with external grants. So we as an office have that ability of bringing in more funding through external grants that maybe organizations or private institutions may want to provide for the process. So we are certainly, the ordinance accounts for that.
And have you done that already? Have you been applying for grants to help increase them?
Not at this point.
Are there foundations that are interested in this sort of work and in supporting cities that are doing this sort of work?
That's something we can explore.
Okay, but whether or not there are you're not sure if there are foundations or nonprofits that are currently already doing this work in partnership with cities and funding them to do this sort of direct democracy work. I'm curious. Yeah. I don't know if there are any, so I'm just sort of asking if you know if there are any.
No, nothing comes to mind right now. There may be, and it's something I could follow up with.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have a vision for what future budgeting for participatory budgeting looks like in like an ideal scenario? What to you makes the most sense?
That's a good question. It's tough to answer because we need to, as an office, be anchored to the reality of the city and where we are with our allocations. So, as it was said before, we can always do more with more funding, but we're trying to make the most with what we have.
Yeah, I understand that. And I understand that even right now, we are in precarious times with whatever is happening on the federal administration, and I give some leeway to that. But I do think, and I want to echo my colleagues who believe that the intent was to do more here. there's a lot of projects that, and I kudos to I think when you map and you see how the money has been spent, it's all the issues that are priorities for us, both big picture issues and smaller, like those pesky rodents. And I think it's just a testament to residents knowing best in terms of how we're spending our city dollars and us really sort of taking a cue from them. So I just wanted to continue to uplift that. And I know that there's going to be some tension in figuring out what the proper amount is, but I think it is important for residents to be able to experience the growth of their power through this line item. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Council President. The chair recognizes Council Weber. Council, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I guess, Director Costello, in terms of the participatory budgeting, we don't have to create this from scratch, right? Because Chicago, New York already has these programs, and they've been in place for longer. Is that right?
They have. Let's say our neighbors in Cambridge have been doing this for the past 11 years. Somerville started a couple of years ago, and we've met with many of the cities to learn about their process. Each city has a different context and runs the process slightly different from each other, but there are many cues that we take on best practices for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I guess compared to those places, how are we doing in terms of the funding level we're at now as opposed to where these other places are? I think New York's in cycle 8 or whatever, in terms of how they grow over time.
Directly with our neighbors across the river, they do 1 million allocation for projects that comes from the capital side. I think both Somerville and Cambridge. From New York, they have 2 processes. One that is based on council districts, and one that is a citywide. And when it comes down to the money that is being divided for each of the boroughs, I believe is approximately the same as what we offer. I think they have a 5 million citywide, and each borough receives, a portion of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, New York's tricky because the numbers get very large very quickly, but the city budget, I think, is $110 billion.
$150 billion.
$50 billion, yeah. So I'm not, there's 8+ million people, but in terms of something that was interesting, at least about New York, and I think Chicago does the same thing, is that neighborhood district allotment. I know we're just doing citywide. Have you looked at, would there be more participation? Is there some way we can, this is coming to your district? What do you think about that?
The way it was set up with the 2 million that we had for the process, we thought that running at citywide, so there are 2 ways in which projects can be implemented. Because we have the operating funds, we can do programs and services, which are projects that city departments can do themselves. For instance, there is this benches project that Streets is currently working on. So they take the allocation and they implement the work. And there are the other types of projects where, for instance, the funds for formerly incarcerated youth, that then becomes a grant that nonprofits across the city can apply for and do the work in the different corners of the city based on local needs. So we thought about many of the projects, if they are grants, there will be open applications for different neighborhoods and organizations to apply and do the work locally. The option of the neighborhood becomes very complex because of size and also, honestly, the amount of funding that we have. I don't think it will be I don't think it will be the best approach, at least at that funding level.
And then in terms of these other places, is there a link between some other number and the number of the participatory budgeting dollar amount? I mean, is there any, do all of them just kind of leave it up to, a sort of a judgment call each year, or do they link it to a metric so it's more predictable?
I think it depends on the municipalities. There are cities I believe Seattle had like a one-time process focused on youth, and they had, if I'm not correctly, about $20 million, but it was a one-time thing with mixed results. I think some good things and a lot of lessons learned. The unique thing about our process is that it's in the city charter. We have this, to go year after year, so gives us more ability to plan ahead.
Yeah, but is there any way, maybe this is for you, Ashley, just in terms of how to create like a sort of predictable, we know we're going to have this amount, it's going to be linked to some tax revenue sort or something that we can base it off something that's not just up to, what we can find in the budget.
Yeah, in order to do that, you would probably need to legislate it in some way to create that direct connection. So otherwise, it just becomes subject to appropriation by the city council and the mayor.
Okay. Does it have to be funded each year? Is that because it's in the city charter? What's your?
The office?
Yeah.
Well, the charter creates the office. And
So
then, again, it's subject to appropriation. Like anything, it's not tied to any particular source or automatic funding source.
Okay. Well, I'd just like to join my colleagues in calling for more funding for this office. I think it does great work, and I want to see it expand in the future. And I'm excited to see that it has been funded and that we're going to keep it alive. I'd like to see it grow in addition to that. In terms of the Treasury, I know, there is, okay, I think there's a special appropriation, in the collections, that was around $500,000 each year from like 2012 to 2024. There was nothing last year and there's nothing this year. Do you know what that was for?
That's a special appropriation for foreclosed properties.
Okay, and
that's
this
the whole process of tax, putting liens on property, filing them at the registry. All of those costs come out of that special appropriation line.
Okay, and then we didn't budget anything for it in FY25 or 6?
We're still waiting on the tax title laws to.
Okay. But if there's money being appropriated, I don't know, if I completely mess this up, do you know what I'm talking about? Does it show up in the data? Okay, but so you're expecting money to be appropriated for it in the next year?
Yes. For the FY26?
Yes. But there's zero in the budget?
We'll take a look and follow
Okay,
up on
sorry,
exactly. Maybe it got moved to a different spot, so we'll check.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for being here. I have lots of questions, so most likely I'll have 3 rounds. So Ashley, if you have to go get your dog walked, you better call somebody to help you with that one. All right, so I guess let me just start off by thanking everyone. I think it's important for you all to know that we do know how difficult it is to balance this budget every year while also meeting the demands of those that we serve, and so thank you for that juggling act. I'm going to start most of my questions with the Treasury, and then my second round, I'll do participatory budget, just so that we have a flow here. So there are several fund balances trust funds that we have. I don't know if you want George White, then there's one in particular that I'm really intrigued by, and I'm hoping that you might be able to tell me what the balance is in this particular fund, and it's the Law Enforcement Fund. I'd like to know what the current balance is and how much has been collected and expended from it so far this fiscal year, and in what ways?
Yes, so thank you for that question. So we are working on putting together a summary of the Law Enforcement Trust Fund because I know that came up during the BPD hearing. I think there are unfortunately many things in the city that are different but called the same thing. So there's the law enforcement trust fund that I think you were referring to that appears in the ACFR at 11 point something million. And then BPD was talking about something else that had a different balance. We're talking about two different trust funds.
But I'm talking, but my question specifically is about the law enforcement.
That 11 million.
That has 11
yes,
million.
Exactly.
Yes,
so
that's what I'd like to know.
Yes, and we are working on putting together a summary so we can clearly show what that is, how money goes into it, how money comes out, what, if any, expenditures have come against that account. So we don't have that today, but I know that that's a interest of you all, so we are working on that follow-up.
Thank you. It would be great to have that as we continue to navigate. And then just, let's stay in this fund for a little bit. In regards to the allocation of those funds, God bless you.
Thank you.
Those funds are earmarked to be allocated in what way? The law enforcement fund.
The $11 million.
The $11 million.
Yeah, I don't have that.
So we don't know how we don't know how you guys dole those dollars out? There's no criteria for how you spend it?
There almost certainly is. I just don't have it today with me, and so that's part of what we need to provide back to you.
Okay, so I'm going to stay there real quick. If we wanted to tap into that fund to reallocate some of those resources to some of the things that we like to advocate for, say an increase for a participatory budget, can we tap into that particular fund and move some of those dollars into the participatory budget line item?
I don't know, and that's part of the follow-up we need to do to understand, again, how money goes in, how it comes out, what restrictions there are. Okay. There are, hundreds of trust funds that the city manages that all have different rules around them, and so we're following up to figure out clearly what those rules are.
All right, so then for the record, it would be great to know what all of the trust, we probably have millions and millions and millions of dollars that we're not tapping into that we don't know about, so.
All of the trust funds?
No, I'm just joking.
Oh, okay.
I'm particularly interested in the law enforcement.
Yes,
trust fund.
understood.
Okay. As of March 31st, overtime spending in the collecting division has already exceeded FY25 budget by not that much, but almost $4,000. What is driving that overtime demand?
So we pay half of the mailroom when they process our tax bills. So we've had 300,000 excise and real estate going out pretty close to time-wise. So we had to have them work weekends. So that's where that's where the overtime costs went. But we got to get those bills out.
That's right. We got to get that money in too. All right. The contracted services line item for collecting division is decreasing by $105,000 for FY26. And can you explain the reason for this reduction and what services will be impacted, if any? And then also, as of March 31st, 2025, the Treasury current charges had just about 7.4 of its FY25 budget remaining, about $185,000, with 3 months left in the fiscal year of 2025. Has this line item already gone over budget? And how is that informing your proposed FY26 allocation? And then as of March 31st, 2025, the Treasury Department has approximately $36,600 remaining. Okay, just about 18.6 of its contracted services budget. Yet, an FY26 proposed includes 96,000 decrease. So I'm just curious, what is driving this cut and how will it affect planned services? And then my last question for Treasury, why is there an 18,416 decrease in the accounting and quality control program, given that this program is responsible for maintaining the collecting division's financial records and managing the database that supports your operations? Those are my questions for Treasury.
Okay.
Can you speak to the contracted services?
Yeah. So we had a couple of contracts to do policies and procedures, and that's all finished now. So we're going to publish that this year, so we don't need to. That's the decrease in the contractual services.
Okay. And then what about the $185,000 that is remaining with 3 months left?
In the current year.
For current charges. And I'm gonna throw another one in there while y'all looking. How about
Okay.
that? So I've been really thinking about, I know we're collecting money from parking tickets, from everybody. We're trying to figure out how we keep our lights on. And one of the things that keeps coming back to our office is people who are experiencing financial hardship. I would love to hear from you all. How can we, you know, figure out how we can have people maybe do a payment plan for their parking tickets, payment plans for scenarios in which, you know, they get a parking ticket for $90, they have 30 days to pay it. Sometimes people don't have that. And I'm curious what, if any, feedback you can provide about how we can help alleviate the financial hardships that a lot of people are being faced. Because then you put a boot on somebody's car, then they can't get to work, and then they can't pay their bill to get their car out, and then they lose their housing. It has a ripple effect, and you may not think that a $90 ticket is a big deal, but to somebody who is working 2 to 3 jobs just to stay here, a $90 ticket could really put somebody in a financial distress situation. So from a collections department, do you
So we don't collect, parking tickets would be the parking.
the BBD?
Yeah.
But you guys got the big money.
We get the big money.
Okay, well then, all right. Well, I just wanted to ask because that's a pet peeve of mine now.
Yeah.
I really want to help people who are at the
No,
lowest of the
absolutely.
lowest. And
We are the same.
so maybe we could take some of the money from one of these trust funds to set up a little fund for people who can't afford to pay their tickets so that we can help support them.
So on the tax side, what we do is, we do payment agreements. It's not a contract, people just send in payments, and if you are paying as you can, we do not forward that to petition it or send it to the law department. So we work with, and then we also reach out to the home center
Okay.
and see if there's a way that they can help them.
All right.
So we've been very successful with that as far as,
And I know we're filibustering here until I buy Ashley and her teammates some time, but I would like some answers to those questions, and then I'll wait for my second round to continue to ask more. But it would be great to have some understanding of the dollar amounts that I mentioned. and what's
Counselor,
going
can I
on.
just ask you, so you're asking about the balance in the current year for contracted services?
So for current charges,
Yep.
right, we're at, you had a 7.4, you have about $185,000 remaining with just 3 months left in FY25.
Okay.
And I'm just curious, has this line item already gone over budget? And how is that informing your proposed FY26 allocation?
I'm seeing a slightly smaller, or a smaller number for
Current charges?
current charges for both Treasury and collecting. They're less than 10,000 each, or about 10,000, so I want to make sure I'm talking about the same thing.
yeah, that's what I have too.
Contracted services is quite a bit larger in both divisions, so in collecting, they have, as of March 30th, or 31st, about 165,000 remaining, and in Treasury, about 36,000 remaining.
Yeah, so the number the question that I'm referring to, I have those same numbers, 105 for contracted services.
Yeah.
I have that. But the question regarding that is, why is there a reduction? And if there are going to be services impacted because of it?
So you're saying that you used one time? Yes, yeah. So that one contract that we used for policies and procedures, that one
That's
is
well
finished.
All right.
And we also allotted extra money for FY25 for an upgrade through our tax system.
Okay.
And that has been delayed, so we're going to have a surplus, but we will use that next year.
So then the question that is still outstanding is, as of March 31st, in current charges, you guys had about a 7.4 remaining. That's like $185,000 with 3 months left for fiscal year 2025. And the question is, has this item already gone over budget, and how is that informing your proposed FY26?
Okay, we might have to follow up on that because we have a we're
What do
looking
you
at
have on your list?
so for current charges in the collecting division in the current fiscal year, they're budgeted at just over $11,000, and through March 31st, they've expended just about half of that.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. We will have another round.
Oh, I know I will.
Okay.
That's
The chair recognizes Councilor Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here and testifying on these matters. Before I begin, I just want to give a shout out to someone in the audience, Francesco Tena from Hyde Park. Just thank you for filling me in on all things participatory budgeting and even Citizens Assembly related. So shout out to you. Appreciate that. I become a big fan of participatory budgeting. I have done quite a bit of research, especially after meetings with a few folks. I wanted to say that, I hear things on both sides where some people are saying it's fiscally irresponsible at this time. Others are saying that it will give power more to the residents, take away power from councilors. Not that we have any really in regards to the budget. But I actually see this as an opportunity for more of collaboration between residents and electeds. And I also think it empowers the residents to shape their neighborhoods and also allows underrepresented parts of the city to become more represented and to actually advocate for themselves. One thing that has caught my attention, though, that I think you had mentioned, and I want to ask you about, is that you said it only goes towards operating budget and not capital budget. Is that correct?
We have the ability to fund both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So, for instance, one of the projects that won this past cycle was the installing benches in high ridership bus stops, and that's physical things that we through streets buy and install.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good. So I've got it clarified that. And I want to give a shout out to a colleague of mine in New York who's the city council for District 7, Sean Abreu, who just went through the participatory budgeting. And he was able to get $250,000 for a new sports area upgrade in his district, a new bathroom upgrades for another school, a science lab and technology upgrades at another school, and a library tech upgrades at yet another school. So what I was able to learn from him is that the collaboration between the participatory budgeting office of New York and the city councilors, especially the district city councilors, they're very tight. And he actually helps through the process. And I said, maybe if we did more of that in Boston, we would take away some of that concern of saying, oh, we're taking away power from the council, when in reality, we're going to be part of that process. Have we explored kind of shaping it that way where you're saying, hey, Councilor Pep in District 5, here's $2 million for capital projects in your district. Can you help facilitate a program to say, all right, what do people want that to go to? Is that something we've explored?
So the city of New York, they have two processes, right? I think one focuses on with the city council and one more like a citywide process. That's not a conversation that we've had. Wouldn't be opposed to establishing a conversation and figuring out ways of partnering, moving forward. One thing which is surprising to me, I don't see the PB process here in the city as competing with the council. I think it's all in the effort of engaging residents and having them have more of a say in the priorities of the city. So in any ways that we can collaborate, our office is always open to do that.
Yeah, I believe that it would make it a lot more of a feeling of collaboration between the councilors, the people, and the administration where, I wish we had more of a say in the budget as it is at the moment, where we just have amendments. In reality, they could get voted down or voted up, or one year it exists, the other year it doesn't exist. So I just want to make sure that there is more, just more of that collaboration. So if we can definitely start up that conversation, that'd be good. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Just because that's how I foresee participatory budgeting gaining some traction in here. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. And I do want to echo vice chair of the committee's advocacy, especially when we're thinking about where we have lower turnout in terms of engagement around participatory budgeting. I think taking, that type of focus where you're engaging directly with, through the counselors, it can help with engagement and bring in voices that probably weren't part of that original process to the table. It's more of a focus on, District 4, District 7, and like all the districts. So you're working, really within those neighborhoods and those civics, and they know that this process, is for them. And I think through that, some of the, goals that we're looking to achieve through participatory budgeting, I think we can actually, realize, just because we'll be taking, a lot more effort to getting down into some of those districts and neighborhoods. One of the other questions I have, kind of dovetailing off of Councilor Pepin's questioning, was how many proposals were operating, how many proposals were capital? And I believe the mayor's budget was, not the mayor's budget, but the youth one is completely capital, correct? All right. But in your process, how many?
Let me take a look at the projects. I don't know by memory, but I think we had a majority of operating compared to capital. But give me a couple minutes. I can look it up and give you an answer.
Okay. And can you explain the move to increase contracted community organizations from 9 to 10 to 15 for cycle 2?
Right. That's our effort to try to get to more residents, especially those who often face barriers to participation. So we tested the model during the pilot year. We had lessons learned, but overall it was successful in engaging with groups that focus on a particular demographic. So for cycle 2, we just want to strengthen that and bring more voices into the table, more diversity of groups that partner with us. And as I mentioned, I was pleasantly surprised when, we released this application for becoming a contract partner, as we call it. And we had, about 20 applications in which, doubles what we did the previous cycle. And that shows the interest in the process, but also that people want to work with us to get the word out to residents.
Got it. And that is something that every cycle will have, the contracted community organizations?
It's hard to tell what that will look like in the future, but if it worked for us during the first year, we're trying to continue to expand it for cycle 2 and possibly, into the future.
All right. And then when you said you had $2 million for PB, that also came out of the $2 million. Was that a different type of funding?
So maybe you can.
The $2 million for projects that we awarded in FY25 was kind of the combo of remaining operating funds from the 25 appropriation and a portion from the special revenue fund.
Okay. All right. And what was the total amount for contracted community organizations again?
So for last year, the first cycle, we had about, I'll say $50,000.
Total?
Yeah.
And this is for collections. I know we have set up an online payment system. Does that still take out quarterly, or can you set it up to take out over a 12-month period on a monthly basis?
Right now it's quarterly.
Quarterly?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any plans to try to adjust it so people could pay monthly, knowing that,
It's a lot,
property
yeah.
values
Yeah.
are going up?
That's something we could look into.
Yeah.
We'll be going out to bid on a new contract, so that could be something we could
nice.
put in there.
Yeah. I think that will definitely help our residents a little bit more with that burden.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Can you also go into, this is back to participatory budgeting, can you go into more detail on the voter pool and voting outcomes for cycle 1?
On the what?
The demographics of the pool of voters.
Yeah. We have that on a PowerPoint. I don't have it with me right now, but we have all that because we had an evaluation team help us collect and analyze that data. So it's something we can forward for sure.
All right. And do you have the update on capital versus operating, or is that something?
I'm on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And my last question is, how can the public, we put out these proposals that were put out, how do we track the implementation of the winning ideas?
Mm-hmm. So a couple of things. We are creating a dashboard similar to what we did with the ideas, where people can go and see the status of each of the projects that won that cycle and for future cycles. We're also planning to share updates through our newsletter to people who chose to sign up to the updates that we send. And also through the work with community organizations, once we have these forums and these events in the summer and fall, we plan to update residents on how those projects are going, because I feel like that will bring the enthusiasm that they see that, okay, we voted on this in February, it's already being put into action. So many ways we've also partnered closely with ONS and other departments when we needed to do extra outreach for, let's say, the contract partners. So in many cases, they help us also spread the word about updates and things like that.
Got it. And lastly, the timeline, do you have timelines for each project, and what's the longest timeline for winning proposals?
Yeah, we are working with departments on establishing the path. Something that's great is like all departments are excited that they are receiving this funding to support the ideas that residents had. We estimate that by the summer we'll release an update on the timing for the implementation of those projects, but most, if not all, will start sometime this year. That's the goal. Yeah, we'll provide that information as we have more concrete details.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll now go to councilors for a second round of questions. Councilor Mejia, the floor is, oh, sorry. I feel like, Councilor Braden, the floor is yours.
I'm still here.
Sorry about that.
So the Boston Trust funds amount to about $1 billion. How do we ensure that endowment trusts are invested well and performing optimally to get the best bang for our buck, so to speak?
The trust funds are overseen by a consultant, NEPC, and we meet regularly with them to talk about asset allocation themes. They have a whole team, I think it's 35 people, that their whole role is asset allocation. Mm-hmm. So they propose many different things to us, but due to the long lives of the funds,
some of them are hundreds of years old.
Right. Mm-hmm. So we're looking very long term, and something that happened in April and then the quick rally in May, they'll try to have maybe some ammunition to take advantage if possible, but they're also looking well beyond that.
Yeah, they have a conservative way of investing, but also an income generating, like more capital appreciation.
Yes.
Whatever. So, code enforcement violations. We recently got a home rule passed at the state to be able to increase their fines for code violations, City of Boston code violations. Are we implementing that yet, or are we still working with the departments to figure out the details?
Yeah, so I think we're still thinking about that and which fines it makes sense to increase, and I believe we'd have to come to you all perhaps to do that. So there's definitely that component of the work, but I think as Tim has mentioned a few times, we are also doing a lot of work around the processes of collecting those fines that do go out currently. And so there's been a lot of work that's happened in Treasury to just provide more notice. There had been a time period where notices were not going out of people who had unpaid code enforcement tickets, and so we've seen some improvement in collections there by just doing that.
That's good. And just before the pandemic, the city was seeking an external operational review of revenue collections, and it was an RFP that was sent out. Was it ever done, the operational review, and what were the outcomes, or what were the recommendations?
I think so. I think I know which one you're referring to.
I think it's under Mayor Walsh was.
Yes, I'm trying to remember. Accenture maybe was the group that did it. I don't know. I'd have to follow up with you, but yes, I think that exists somewhere. Before my time, but yes, it was done and it exists, and then COVID happened and I think kind of upended everything.
Yeah, because collections do a really important job.
Yes.
Inside. Make it as easy and as efficient as possible for them. I think we talked about this the last time. I had the similar question about the operational versus capital in the participatory budgeting. Then I think we had this discussion last year, and I don't know that we ever landed on a resolution of the question. Was special revenue funds that need to be, our understanding was they needed to be created by ordinance by the state legislature, and that they couldn't be created by ordinance, but we had to be created by the state legislature. Did we ever get a resolution on that question?
You know, we were talking about that this morning because we thought that might come up. We have to follow up and just go back in our notes and see where we landed on that, but we both remembered that question from our last hearing, so we'll follow up.
Excellent. And did you have an answer to the operational versus capital?
Yeah, we had 11 projects that were operational, like programs or services, and four proposals that were focused on like physical infrastructure.
So I'm wondering, operating is just like if you don't have a long-term plan to keep something going year on year on year, and operating an allotment is not very sustainable. It seems like a capital project is a better use of funds. Like, am I wrong in that?
Regardless of the type of project, the ordinance establishes that it's a one-time disbursement for that project. So it will have to be things that are spent once and then, not continuous.
Yeah. So I think that's why the youth program really puts all the money into capital investments rather than operating, because it's got some tangible benefits that you can see year on year and year going forward.
I think there are pros and cons with each, because with the operating projects, it's things that people need right away, like supports for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated youth. If we can offer funding to nonprofits to run programs that support this population, it's urgently needed. Mm-hmm. It is not long-term, but it's something that supports that group. Same with rental assistance for youth. Mm-hmm. So people need the resources right away, not to be evicted or to be able to access an apartment, and the housing team can support that, on a one-time basis. Many of the projects are also seen as pilots, and if a department sees the benefit and has the resources, could potentially establish something long-term with another part of resources. The challenge, I think, with the capital projects is it takes a lot longer to get implemented because it needs to be built, and when that's the case, sometimes projects tend to pile up before people actually see them in reality. So having a mix, I think, is great because people see the impact right away, but also other things in the background are still being developed. Yeah,
I take your point about, and also with inflation, the cost of something will change over time. So you might have $200,000 for something, but by the time you get through the process, it might cost $300,000. So that's always a challenge. Operating versus capital. Yeah, thank you. Mr. Chair, I think that's all I have.
And if I could, I think in your last round, you had asked about the non-personnel expenditures, whether or not, so it's both. Part of those part of that budget goes to fund the actual process and the contracted services that Renato was talking about, and then whatever is unspent can go towards projects. And then we top that off with the amount left over in the special revenue fund.
Yeah, and just to the point is, if it's a pilot type project, are we spending some money or evaluating outcomes in terms of, is that useful use of funds, or is that to get some metrics on outcomes?
Yeah. So the ordinance required us as an office to report on some of the demographics and funding uses. We're not there yet because the projects haven't been implemented yet, but we are working with departments to establish some sort of data collection system in their programs so we can report back.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the resources to fully assess each of the projects as an office, but that's something we can work with departments and see if they can incorporate some evaluation metrics into what they do.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you, and just wanted to, I may need a third round. Let y'all know that. So I'm going to go to participatory budget, and then I'll probably go back to Treasury. But so I'm just curious. I want to build off of Councilor Caleta Zapata's question about the oversight board, and I'm curious. The residents advising the process, what did they advise or ask for FY26? And how many of the 9 oversight board seats are currently full? And what is the timeline to fill those seats, where we're at with that? And what is the holdup in replacing those? 1 seat has been vacant, I guess, since late August, and another 2 seats for many months. I don't know if we could better understand that, but, Councilor Weber asked last year if the council passes an amendment to increase funding for PB projects this year, will we spend it? And I think we will do that, right? So I'm just curious. This is for Ashley. You've mentioned several times that it's a choice when we're making budget decisions, and budget usually reflects our values. And my hope is that when we're thinking about just creating more space for people to feel part of the decision-making process, I think PB is well set up for a model of what true democracy looks like. So it seems like there is a disconnect with the choices that we're making to give people more of a say in how they want us to spend their dollars. And it feels like we're putting a limitation on kind of what that looks like when we have this tool. And I'm trying to grapple with that tension. So, I'm going to go first to the questions that I asked about the oversight, and then I would love to better understand the choices that we're making as it relates to the underfunding of participatory budget.
So out of the 9, and you may have to remind me of some of the questions you had, I was trying to keep up. Out of the 9 members that we started, we have currently 6 that are very active. And the other 3, for many reasons, they had to leave their posts. And we've been working with the boards and commissions team to find candidates for replacement, and it's just been taking a little longer than we expected, but we are actively trying to identify. Yeah.
What have you heard from people? Why are they not interested, or is it the time commitment? You know what? Because most people are eager to be engaged in processes like this, especially when it comes to, advocating for the things that they want to see. So, do you know what is preventing people from engaging?
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I'm not sure. I know that when we started, too many of the members who signed up, they were surprised about the number of times we met over the first few months, because we were building the process as quickly as we could. So almost like weekly meetings of 2 hours every Thursday. So that was a lot, and I was very appreciative of their flexibility. And now we're trying to have more of a regular, maybe monthly meeting with them. So if it's time commitment, now we're trying to have a more streamlined process. But yeah, we're actively trying to address those 3 seats because, it's important to have that representation.
Okay, no, thank you for that. And the other question was about building off of Councilor Caleta Zapata's question about the residents advising the process, what did they advise or ask for FY26 for the budget for PB?
Residents or the board?
Both.
Okay, so the board, they didn't do like a formal recommendation of funding, so we don't have that information. And in terms of residents, what we've heard through, advocacy on increasing the funding. Yeah.
So increasing PB funding, right?
What we've heard from many of the advocacy organizations, yes.
So just for the world, so that we understand that people are asking for us to increase the PB budget, and we're making a choice not to. And that is a bit, like, I'd love to better understand this and be able to help people understand the why, especially in this moment when people already feel a sense of apathy and they don't feel engaged. And this could be a really great tool to increase engagement and to get people really excited about democracy all over again. And so even from an engagement strategy, if that's what people are asking for, then what can we say to them as to why we're not delivering?
Thank you for that. So I would say, I think you're now approaching the end of budget hearings. You've had many, many departments come in and talk about their budget for this upcoming year. And as you know, we weren't able to do increases for really anyone this year, aside from kind of basic increases for just the cost of doing what they've been doing. I'm sure Streets has been in here and talked about the $12 million increase we had to do for the trash collection contract. So we found this year real pressure on the budget given our revenue forecasts as well as sort of what we see coming and the need to deliver existing city services. And so as a result, there was very little increase that was given in the budget for other things that people have asked for. And so I think we're really proud of what we've been able to do with the $2 million and have set this up so that there is some predictability in the source going forward, despite some of the uncertainty that's happening out in the world.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I guess where I'm a little bit kind of confused by is that there's been an increase in the police department budget, but not an increase in housing and other, basic needs for people who are just trying to get by here in the city of Boston. And so I'm just curious about, because I know that a lot of folks are asking for more funding for PB, and I'm going to assume that those dollars will help support some of the things that community residents are asking for. So I'm curious, and I want to go back to, I believe there's $3 million increase for the police budget, or I don't know, more?
I don't know off the top of my head, but okay.
Y'all should know these answers.
I know,
get it together.
I don't have it committed to memory.
But I do know, I don't know what the dollar amount is, but I do know there is an increase in the police department budget. And I'm going to take a little extra time, Chair, if you don't mind, to finish this thought. Is that okay?
Yes.
So I know that there is an increase in the police budget, but there's not an increase in housing. There's not an increase in participatory budget. There seems to be a disconnect in terms of what we are hearing and what we're seeing. And if we're the safest city in the country, we've done a really good job. And I know some of that has been as a result of stabilizing housing needs, also providing more youth jobs. Like, we've done great work that we can point to. So I'm just curious, are we making decisions? I'm just curious, like, why increase the police budget and not increase PB or housing,
right,
or youth jobs?
So as you know, police is one of our largest departments because we have many officers, and the cost growth in that department is usually associated, and I'm pretty sure I'm saying this correctly for this year, with the cost of salaries and benefits that are bargained for as part of their collective bargaining contracts. And so as those costs grow year over year, we have to increase the department's budget to support those. So that's typically in many departments where you've seen increases, it's either as a result of, collective bargaining increases or costs of doing business on key sort of city services like the trash contract. So not very discretionary in a lot of ways. And so we were able to keep costs constant to fit within our revenue projections. We did that.
Thank you. Councilor Chair Worrell, I'm the last one here, so I can wait for my next turn.
Okay, the chair recognizes Councilman here.
Okay,
Councilor, you have the floor.
reset the minutes, because I want my full time. Thank you. All right. Thank you, guys, for, there's a public testimony, Eliza, do you want?
There's actually one more person over here who wanted to testify.
Okay.
Yeah, then let me just wait.
I was just wondering.
Okay.
Do they have to sign up or can they?
Yeah, they could sign in because we're keeping track of everyone who testifies. All right, I give some quick instructions on testimony. So when you testify, please say your name, any affiliation, residence, and then also please keep your comments to 2 minutes. And Osir there?
Osdir.
Osdir, floor is yours.
Hi, my name is Osdir Claros. I'm a member of Nube, and I'm here to ask you guys if you guys could raise the participatory budget to $4 million, because me being a youth from here, East Boston, we have different needs, and we as youth, me personally, I feel like more youth would benefit from having more spaces or jobs, because me personally, I have a job, and like it helps take my mind off things, it helps me relax. And I know there's a lot of youth out there that want to get jobs, but there's not a lot of employment for youth right now. And also the space that we need is very limited. We want the participatory budget to go up to $4 million, because that's the amount that we need for those spaces and those jobs to be able to go out and actually be able to participate in those jobs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex?
We requested an interpreter last week, but they weren't available. Can I interpret for him?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Alexander. Yo vengo como a testificar sobre mi experiencia de lo que he vivido o lo que he visto y estudiado prácticamente sobre el presupuesto participativo y sobre cómo se distribuye esto en diferentes departamentos.
Hi, my name is Alex. I came to testify about my experience with participatory budgeting and allocations to different departments.
So, prácticamente lo que yo he visto y me preocupa en ese sentido es cómo está distribuido, porque he visto y he estudiado la gráfica del presupuesto y he visto que la policía se lleva el mayor porcentaje del presupuesto, y eso es algo que, pues, como joven de la comunidad, me preocupa, porque en arte y cultura hay trabajos para jóvenes y muchos departamentos más tenemos muy poco dinero, y eso es algo muy preocupante para mí.
Yeah, I just want to talk about how the budget is allocated. When I look at the budget, I see the area with the most funding is the police department. And as a youth in East Boston, this is really worrying to me, because there's a lot of areas that I look at, like art and youth jobs, that are much lower. And that's worrying.
Y como joven de la comunidad, a mí me gustaría ver como más inversiones en trabajos para jóvenes, programas, y también que eso incluya el programa de vivienda, que también nos ayudará en el futuro a nosotros también como jóvenes, en el futuro, para que nosotros podamos obtener mejores trabajos y mejores viviendas accesibles para nosotros y futuramente a nuestras familias también.
Some areas as a young person that I really like to see an increase in is youth jobs, as well as housing and affordable housing, because that will help us in the future if we have stable housing to get better jobs and to advance. I'd also, youth jobs and youth programs, both of those would like funding for.
Okay. Eso sería todo. Muchas gracias.
That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you to our young people who lent their voice to this process. I always encourage and excited when I see our young people come and testify. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so I'm curious. I think that participatory budget, the youth received like $1 million, right, capital? And for us in this age, the older group people, we're only getting $2 million, right? So like if we did $1 million for young people back then, and we're testing things out and flexing a little bit of whatever little power we have, the allocation is only $2 million for citywide, you know, all ages and spaces and places that we could potentially be in. So can you help us understand why $1 million was allocated just for youth? And this has been this years ago, but now when we have new powers, then we would think that having more dollars to work with could help us engage people. Why only $2 million?
So the decision for the youth process, I'm not aware of what went into deciding the $1 million. I know this is, it's been active since 2014, so it's been $1 million each year.
Yeah. But that's still a lot to right off the bat start off with $1 million. And then here we are only at $2 million for...
They continue at $1 million since the beginning for the youth process. We started with $2 million.
And we've stayed there.
And for the reasons we explained a little earlier, based on the funding allocation that we have now, the $2 million per year allows us to have that consistency. I agree with you know, we can do more with more resources, but I think Ashley had explained some of the considerations on that amount.
Yeah. You know, Ashley, I don't know if you remember this, but I think when we first had our little superpowers, we thought we were like, we want $40 million for participatory budget. Y'all are crazy, $40 million. And I think I was asking for that too, with a lot of confidence, thinking that we could make that happen. And you want to talk about managing expectations. Good Lord, you have managed all of our expectations. But now that we have done the pilot, we have an executive director, we have the infrastructure, it seems like, and we have the appetite. What is preventing us from increasing that line item just slightly? Maybe not $2 million, maybe we can get it to, maybe we can get $3 million. What would that look like?
I mean, sorry, this is probably going to be an unsatisfying answer, but in our recommended budget, again, sort of within the resource constraints we had and the other trade-offs we had to make, that was the recommended amount that we put forward for this fiscal year. I think we're hearing clearly that there's a lot of interest and appetite to grow that. And, you know, as the budget moves through your process over the next couple of days and weeks, happy to have a conversation with you all about what it would mean to increase that amount, but I know you all are going to go through a similar process where you're weighing trade-offs and choices as well as you put your stamp on the budget, but happy to have that conversation with you all.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all going to be advocating. As you can see, all of my colleagues are on the same page as it relates to this particular line item, so trust to see that potentially as one of the amendments that we put forth, and you know, we should just brace ourselves for some advocacy in that space. So, and then I'm curious, because we've gone through well, you've gone through this process, but without sharing any names, and you don't have to tell me who or how many folks, but can you tell me about at least one participant in this year's process that really sticks out in your mind?
That stands out.
That stands out, yeah.
I can tell you about a group of youth that attended one of the forums in Dorchester. We held it, an organization hosted us. We contracted with them, and they helped us with the recruitment, but we also worked with Sociedad Latina to bring some youth to that space. And I really liked how, among the many ideas they had on the table, they chose to put forth one that relates to supporting elderly populations with basic needs that are not covered by insurance or other programs. And I found that very I don't know what's the word, like warming, that they are concerned about their abuelos, their elders, rather than, in addition to their own needs, that they have plenty. So that was one instance that, made me proud that we're offering a space that people can come and share the things they care about. So that's a story I can share about that process.
And how have you been keeping them engaged in the process since then?
So after the forums, we engaged with the organization to help us do outreach, passing the word for voting. So I know that they were active in voting, and we are re-engaging with the same organization to continue for cycle 2. So the hope is that we continue. It's hard to keep track of the individuals, but through the organizations, we get to people.
That's great. Thank you for that. And then I guess one of the things that I'm also trying to better understand is when we're going through taking money from one place and bringing it over to another, I think about the Mayor's Office of Housing. I think of, the Boston Public Health Commission. I think about youth jobs. I think about these pressing issues that our constituents have been, advocating on behalf of. And I'm curious, as it relates to participatory budgeting, how has the administration kind of had coordinated conversations about what we're hearing in the participatory budget, how you're putting together your budget that you present to us? Because I always say Boston is resource rich, but coordination poor. And I feel like there's so much that we could be learning from each other. And I'm curious, how are you all communicating what you're hearing out in these streets and how it manifests into the proposals that you send to us?
Yeah, and Renato should definitely say more, but what I will say is I think, at least in the time I've been here, we've sort of I've seen, 3 different versions of budget engagement that happens in the fall to varying degrees of success. And I think this was one of the most robust versions, obviously, because we're actually asking residents, what do you want to see in the budget? And we collected 1,200 ideas. So it was, we had an incredible amount of information that we could draw on. And because of the timing of the way we're doing the cycle, it's designed so that it can feed into our budget process. So as we were putting out budget guidance to our departments, we were linking to them, here are all of the ideas that came in. You can see, we've sort of done this for you. We've done the budget engagement, you can see. It takes time for people to understand and know where to look and understand what the team has done, but I think it's a really awesome opportunity to flow that right into our budget process.
Thank you. Now, last I heard my buzzer go off, but this is the $1 million or the $1 trillion question here for you all. Because you're hearing it from the community, you're hearing it from the city councilors, right? We're all advocating for an increase in the participatory budget line item. If you're hearing that, how can we then justify not delivering on it? I'm going to need to have some really good talking points as to why we were unable to make that happen.
Again, I think it's just in a constrained resource environment, needing to make choices across a $4.8 billion budget, which I know is very large. So it seems, how can we possibly not do a little bit more in this one area? And so it's, in across the budget, across the city this year, it was all about preserving existing services and really trying to make sure that we are in a good position to deal with economic uncertainty. But like I said, I would expect, and as you mentioned, I expect that this council will have a keen interest in putting their mark on this area as the budget moves through, and we're happy to work with you and have conversations about what that can look like.
Yeah. And I'll end with this one, because I know some folks are asking for $4 million in the budget to increase. That's what I've been hearing out in these streets. They want a little bit more. Well, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We're here until 5, just so you know. On the notice, it said here until 5, so I might keep y'all until 5. But what would be a reasonable amount to kind of manage our expectations with? I mean, I know people are asking for 4. I'm trying to get it at 3. What would you say is reasonable?
I don't know if there's a magic number, really, and it's one of those things, too, where, you know, we put out a ballot that had 15 proposals on it, and we sort of took however much added up to the amount of money that we had available, and so I think more resources just means more ideas can get funded, you know, I think we came up with a really good process. I think we did a lot of great things within the amount that we had allocated, but I don't know if, there's no science for me throwing out a number here. I think it really depends on what is available and what you all are trading off against as you're making final decisions.
Okay.
You have any more questions, Councilman here?
Oh, you're gonna give me more time?
Yes.
Thank you. So I'm curious, because Councilor Pepeng mentioned some of our other, you know, colleagues from different spaces and places, and you know how competitive we are with New York. We can't have New York beating us in this game, okay, because we will not go there. But I'm curious, what would it look like for us to be more in partnership with your office? I know that when we first came onto the scene and doing the budget, participatory budget wasn't even passed, but our office did budget pop-ups all across the city to engage people, to listen, to educate them about the budget, because we were learning about the process, so we'd like to bring people along on our journey. So we were at barbershops and hair salons, we were all over the place, asking people how you want us to spend your money. And so we've tried to, you know, do some of that work. And then I know my council colleagues on the district level also do budget town halls and bring some information back. But have you been working closely with my council colleagues on participatory budget organizing and planning and execution? And if so, I'd like to get the invite, because I was not part of the process, but I'd like to be more engaged. And I don't know if I have to be, you know, invited or how, what that looks like, but I wanna be engaged.
Definitely, and I welcome the partnership and finding ways of collaborating. We, as we prepare for launching Cycle 2, we'll have a list of all the events that community partners will be hosting, and anyone is welcome to attend. Last year, we had Councilor Coletta attend some events in East Boston, which was great. But I'm open to finding ways of collaborating, and so I'll leave it at that, like an invitation.
Yeah, no, and I will crash the meetings if I'm not invited, just so you know. I show up anyways, not just joking. No, I'm not. I won't be there. But I just think that from a place, because the work that we do is all about co-governance. So we've been really intentional about making sure that every piece of policy that we work on, every decision that we make, we have a blueprint for what it looks like to really lead in partnership with those that we serve. And I think we've learned a lot about what it looks like now that I'm on the inside, trying to develop that framework within a system that has not really been about co-governance. And so I'm intrigued, and I believe this is a department that we could develop something and work more collaboratively as it relates to the funding. That's why I'm offering my support in ways that could be helpful to you all. And then the last thing that I just want to uplift is that I think one of the things that I see is when we have the political will to do things, or the desire to innovate and just figure things out, we can get to where we need to be. And I feel like, yes, I understand we're in a very uncertain time financially, and this is not the time that we want to be reckless with the budget, and I don't want that to be the narrative. And that is also understanding that we are in a time when people don't trust government and want to be more engaged in our processes. So even if it's through the PB process, where we could just be more aligned, I just want to advocate for that. And I think that that's what I believe this moment is asking us to do. And I think addressing PB through, as you heard, the young people, more youth jobs, we already know where that money's going to go. So it's going to go towards the things that people have been advocating for. So I see it more as a win for the council, a win for the community, a win for the administration. And I think that that's what we should be gearing towards. And I wish I had more questions for the Treasury Department. I do actually have one last question for y'all. You mentioned that most of the money that you see are like the big ticket items. And so the Neighborhoods Jobs Trust is one of those, right? That's a big fund.
Neighborhood Jobs Trust is managed in this part of Treasury through the trust team, correct, Tim?
Yes, the trust is the managing body, and then we sign off on allocations.
And so I've been curious. This is a housing situation, but it's also not that we need any more taxes on people. But I've just been thinking about, no, for real, this is something that I've been thinking about, because there's a lot of people who are being displaced from the city of Boston, and people, developers are really, they're developing luxury, or I would wonder where a displacement tax fund would live in if I were to push for something such as that. Like, for every project that you build in the city of Boston, a percentage of how many people are likely to be displaced because of it, if we can add a tax to earmark to help people who now then have to live in Brockton, Stoughton, Randolph, because they can no longer afford to live here because we've displaced them. What would that look like, and where would that live?
Not speaking to the policy of it, I think the trust team has a lot of experience kind of managing special funds that are, kind of a special tax or fee or surcharge or things on top of some other, so I think that if something like that were to exist and were legislated and approved and all of that, it's something that the trust team could manage if that's how it was designed, but I, can't speak to the policy exactly.
Because I know that that when we're looking at the IDP, there's in the planning development department, there's also a fund for housing. That it's jobs and housing, right?
Yep.
So my thinking is there's already a mechanism in place for the housing fund. If we could just increase it a little bit and set aside some dollars to support people who have had to transition out of the city, I think, because we've created that hardship for them. And I think that we should figure out how we can hold ourselves accountable to. I know that's crazy talk, especially during these times, for me to ask for more ways. But I also think that people who have grown up here in the city of Boston are worried about whether or not they can stay here. And what I'd like to do is think of as many ways as possible for folks who have dedicated their lives to Boston to be able to stay here, because we're not building for people who can afford to stay here. And I think that there is an opportunity for us to hold ourselves accountable as we continue to have conversations about that this is a city for everybody. Everybody has to be able to stay here. Otherwise, it's a city for nobody. So I just want to say that there's an opportunity. I don't know what it looks like. I don't have the answers. I'm not good with all of this stuff that you all are good in, but I do know that there is an opportunity for us to hold somebody accountable to the rapid displacement of people who can't afford to live here anymore. So I'll just end with that advocacy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Councilor. Again, thank you for your time and your service to the City of Boston. Thank you to my council colleagues and their team. Thank you to IGR, central staff. Thank you to my team. Thank you to the residents who came and lent their voice to this process. We will have another listening session. Okay, all right, we will have another listening session. Yep, I'm not gonna adjourn yet. I'm gonna go to you before I adjourn. We will have another listening session on tomorrow from 6 o'clock right here in the Ionella Chamber. So please spread the word and let that be another opportunity to advocate for the things you want to see in the budget. Before I adjourn, I will pass it off to my council colleague, Council Mejia, for another round of questions. Okay.
There's just one more. Because if we can't get more money, then we can find other ways to get people involved. And so that I'm curious, you know, what role does the community play in can play in filling the empty PB committee spots that exist? Is there an opportunity for folks to kind of participate in that?
So everybody's always welcome to the public meetings we have with the board, and we always have reserved time at the end for public comment. So people can always be engaged in, and we consider public comment very seriously, and it has helped improve our process tremendously, honestly. And we'll continue working with the boards and commissions team. I know they have their process where kind of like following their lead on how to, but it's something for us to think about. Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor. And the hearing on docket numbers 0822 through 0830 is adjourned.